And yet you also identify these massive, I mean, just existential risks that come with that productivity. Help us define what that is, and when did you begin to conceive of the risks that are involved with this that come alongside this AI?
I mean, any new technology comes with serious downsides. Society always has to adapt to a new suite of risks, whether it was nuclear power or the steam engine or electricity, cars, trains, planes. I have a funny anecdote in my book that the first time people in the late 1800s saw a train on a railway track, a number of the spectators, including the local MP at the time in Liverpool, actually didn't realize that the train was moving towards them and that they needed to get off the tracks to be able to avoid being hit by the train. They ended up being killed on the day of the launch. And it's just kind of a remarkable insight. It's hard to even believe that's true now, that a new technology could be so unfamiliar and so strange that we wouldn't even grasp the concept of it moving towards us and not being able to stop. And, I think that's a kind of really interesting metaphor for all technologies. At first, they seem really threatening and really confusing and overwhelming. But over time, we realize their limitations and we see the ways in which they're fallible and the ways in which we need to restrict and control them. And we ultimately end up harnessing the benefits whilst minimizing the downsides. I think there are lots of examples of this throughout history. If you take aircraft flight, for example, it's kind of an amazing thought to think that we could all get into a tin tube 40,000 feet in the sky and, fly halfway around the world, and it to be a consistent, reliable, and safe way of getting around, one of the safest forms of transport. And that's because, the industry as well as the regulators have spent the last, 6 or 7 decades putting in place regulations of all kind, big and small, and adopted new best practices every time they see an error. There is an onboard flight recorder, the black box recorder, tracking absolutely everything that happens in real time on that aircraft, everything that the cockpit says, the pilot says, the staff say, all the telemetry and so on. And that information is then fed back into other competitors if there is a major incident and best practices need to be updated. So there's plenty of precedent for good regulation here. And I actually think we're at a moment where we need to sort of quell the alarm a little bit. I think people have got a little bit ahead of their skis in terms of some of the panic that we're seeing around the consequences here. And I also think that we really have to focus on the huge potential upsides.